Texas education officials are considering a proposal to put religious texts on students' required reading list.
Now, this move could have national implications and could trigger lawsuits regarding the separation of church and state, likely reaching the Supreme Court and setting a national precedent for education.
Texas education officials are weighing a controversial move, adding Bible texts to a state-required reading list for millions of public school students. The proposal puts the Lone Star State at the center of a growing national debate over the role of religion in public classrooms. The First Amendment religion clause bars state-sponsored religion separating church and state, but schools may teach about it objectively. Both sides insist they are on solid legal ground.
Schools were using the Old Testament and New Testament according to state law for the enrichment of knowledge.
The problem is when public schools stop teaching about religion and start endorsing one version of it.
The proposed reading list would span kindergarten through 8th grade alongside classics like Little Red Riding Hood and the Odyssey, but it also includes Bible stories like the Golden Rule and David and Goliath. Critics warn the changes could shift schools' lessons towards a more U.S. and Texas-centric view with less focus on global history.
They can't simply omit the parts of history and religion that don't align with their nationalistic agenda.
We continue to teach American exceptionalism, teach about American heroes, teach about our founding documents.
And Texas isn't alone. Starting in the 2028 school year, Utah will require some students to study Bible passages as literary references connected to America's founding documents.
There is no neutrality really in anything, especially in education. There's always going to be some worldview imposed upon children.
Well, a vote on the Texas reading list is expected tomorrow. If approved by the Republican Texas Board of Education, the curriculum would take effect in the 2030 school year.